SUVs are just the best cars. They are safe, incredibly spacious, and you can drive in the snow and mud. I love SUVs. Wait a minute. I totally disagree with that. Have you ever experienced a situation like that? Someone comes up to you and confronts you with a statement that you find just ridiculous, but you don't know how to answer him or her. You feel speechless, confused, or dazzled. I know that feeling. It can be very hard to find good arguments spontaneously. Finding arguments and explaining them properly just takes time. But it really helps to write your arguments down, although that's not as easy either. But I'll show you how to do that today. I'll show you how to write an argumentative essay so you can win people over and convince them with your arguments. Please take out your exercise book or a sheet of paper and write down the things that I write down. You can pause the video whenever you want. For almost any topic, there are pros and cons. In an argumentative essay, you either weigh the pros and cons against each other, or you show only the pros or the cons. So there are two main types of the argumentative essay. Either you try to win someone over, you convince the other party, or you present the pros and cons neutrally. For both types, of course, you need an introduction. And that can be either some statistics or a quotation or some recent developments. The introduction shouldn't be too long. You should get to the point relatively quickly, and therefore it is important to search for something that leads to the main point quickly. For the main body, for the main part of your essay, you have three options. Please write them down in a grid. The first option is to stay neutral and show both sides, both pros and cons. Ideally, you don't show the reader your opinion here, but you let him or her decide him or herself. So, the way you could do this is to first give a pro argument, then a contra argument. Then argument 3 would be pro, 4, contra, and so on. You can start with the weakest argument and then slowly go over to stronger arguments. For option 2, you write a convincing essay, but you also show both sides. And there are two options actually within this option 2. You can either give all of the positive aspects and then all of the negative ones, or, shown on the right side, you give a pro, then a con, a pro, then a con, and then a pro. Make sure that the last argument shows your opinion. So if you're against something, then the last argument should be a contra argument. For option 3, you try to convince someone, win someone over, and you only show one side. To achieve that, you can show only pro arguments, for example. Start with the least important argument and end with the most important one. It should look like a pyramid. For all three types, you will need to write a conclusion. So that's point 3. If you chose a neutral essay, then you can give a summary of what you found out, for example. Or you make an appeal to the readers to reach their own conclusion. For option 2, if you want to convince someone, you should give your own opinion in the end, or you could talk about further consequences. If you chose option 3, you only showed one side, then you can give a summary, you can show further consequences, and also maybe give possible solutions. Of course, you're more convincing when you already have a solution for the points that you've mentioned. No matter which type of essay you choose, before you start, you need to become an expert on the topic. Even though you might only write about the pros, you really need to be aware of both sides and both arguments. So, becoming an expert means getting familiar with the vocabulary, which specific vocabulary do you need for this topic, and getting familiar with the arguments that might be pros or cons. So you can do some research here if possible. Let me show you the process in an example. So here I've created a mind map on this topic, SUVs, so pros and cons. Remember, the driver of the SUV came up, said it's the best car, and now I want to convince him that it's not. In order to do so, first I need to get to know the categories of cars. So there are vans, there are station wagons, there are compact cars or hatchbacks, and of course there are the sports utility vehicles. So we're talking about SUVs, we're talking about sport utility vehicles. When we talk about cars, it might be helpful to know that public transport is the opposite of the individual traffic. Then words such as CO2 emissions, fossil fuels can help when we have arguments concerning the climate change. Safety might be a pro argument. Then I wrote down what might be an alternative to SUVs. So for example, vans or station wagons could be used. I also found some statistics that prove that SUVs are very popular at the moment. There was an increase of 100% between 2014 to 2018. One should be aware that for some people, off-road driving is really important. They want an all-wheel drive. And this is probably only half of the arguments that you could find. In the end, I highlighted my arguments for pros and cons, and I wrote down what could be my intro. So here you have the full overview. Again, pause the video if you need to write that down in your exercise book. And thanks for watching. In the next video, I'll show you how to write one great argument. So just a single argument, how to do that. See you then. Thank you for watching.